Thanks for joining us, Deepak.
Thank you, Suhas. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, awesome. So a very, very short intro. For those who don't know Deepa, I'm sure everyone here follows him already. But if you don't, please do go follow him on Twitter already. He's had over 20 plus years of building products and has like shares a bunch of insights around growth analytics. He's worked across various domains, fintech, media, gaming being the priority ones. A bunch of notable names that he's worked with as well: Times, Satyam, Zapak, Paytm, and now building out his own venture, Flatwhite. So, Deepak, keeping it super crisp, if I were to ask you if you can share a TLDR, if I'd ask you a TLDR into your life story, what would that be?
Okay, so I think I never planned, whatever I'm doing right now. In fact, I was studying CA about
Hmm.
25 years back and couldn't clear it. And I ended up buying a computer. And then, I thought, this is it. This is what I want to do. I can't be an accountant because, even though, I liked numbers, I liked maths, but accounting was not something which interested me. So I started fiddling around with my computer and I built and this is, I'm talking about 1995, 94, right? There's no internet in India. And I started building my own BBS using a 14.4 kbps modem. And those were
Those
crazy
days.
days. You didn't know
Yeah.
what exactly is happening around you because computer means it's an offline box just to play games or maybe do some simple things. And one thing led to another. I started with game testing CDs. I used to test game CDs way back in 1997 for a company called Cyber Multimedia. They used to import game CDs, and that's when my interest for gaming happened. And though it was work, but it was really fun because the idea was to see if those games are working, there are any bugs or not. Then I started doing web designing because this was pre-com era, and everyone wanted to have their own websites. So I thought, wow, this is great. This is what I really want to do, and I even launched my own venture. I mean, I wouldn't call it a venture. We used to call it a business back then. In 1998, the website was called cdrominternational.com. Everyone was making website. Your Panwala, your Mithai Wala, and everyone was making website way back in 1999. So I also made one. The idea was to sell game CDs online. Very ambitious. There's no e-commerce. There's no technically no payment, no PGs back then. So I created a website. I said I'll sell CDs online. I mean, very revolutionary, but it wasn't revolutionary. The idea was that people will send me an order, and then they'll have to send me a check. I will courier them these CDs. It was like a mail order thing, just that I put it up on a website. Obviously, it didn't work. Yeah, so it's been mostly product management since then. I've been building products with multiple companies like you mentioned. I worked with from Times, then moved to Satyam, then moved to US.
Mhm.
Worked with the World Bank, built their intranet, and that's when I got interested in UX because World Bank was very big on user experience because their intranet was used by 200 countries, people from different nationalities, different kind of understanding of computers. So I went deep into UX back then. And then gaming happened. Worked in gaming for 8 years. Now this is again a pre-smartphone era, right? 2004, 2005. Uh, India was building Java games for mobile operators who would keep 70% of your revenues. And you didn't know what exactly your numbers are. You would actually, just be like a factory building games without really, looking at any metrics. And that's when we decided to build games for US market because India market was not, like I said, telcos were keeping 70%. There's no incentive for anyone to build games in India, even though it was big money. I mean, during those days, when I say big
Back
money,
then,
it was
yeah.
relatively big money because telcos used to mislead people into buying games, right?
Mhm.
So a lot of companies made a lot of revenues there. So
Okay.
I started building for smartphones, uh, you know, um, uh, as early as 2008 or 9. When Android was just picking up, and we just started learning, how to really build games for smartphones. And so I've been working on small screens from 2005 itself. So
Mhm.
my perspective of so when I let's say I have laptop lying next to me and a mobile phone, my natural intention is to pick up mobile phone and check my emails or reply to my emails. I don't relate to bigger screens much, and I think that is what helped me transition to this new era of smartphones. And thankfully, by the time Paytm happened in 2012,
Mm-hmm.
very early days. Again, 2012 Paytm was just taking shape, right? Uh, I was the one who started pushing for Paytm app because Paytm was still a web player. I mean, at that time everyone was a web
Right.
player. We had
Right.
less than a few million internet users and hardly any smartphones in India. I still remember when we launched Paytm app in 2012. There were less than a million smartphones in India, maybe not even million. I mean, those
Mm-hmm.
numbers are insignificant.
Right.
And it was a very bold step by Paytm. Vijay at, was being just visionary. He said, let's just put all our energies, because the team was very small. There were just
Mm-hmm.
12, 15 people. Let's put all our energies on the mobile app. And everyone's like, why? I mean, there's no users and website is going great. He said, that doesn't mean that we lose focus on website, but the future is mobile. And obviously, he was absolutely bang on. And the good part was that we had no competition early on, right? There were hardly any apps in Indian Play Store. That meant Google really supported us initially. Because they were encouraging a lot of developers to build apps in India, and I got a free hand. There's no competition. There's no pressure to outdo anyone. So I learned a lot of things. Experimented. Did a lot of stuff on Facebook. I mean, when I say Facebook, we ran campaigns on Facebook and Google, and the CPI rates were ridiculous back then. We were getting app stores for 4 rupees, 5 rupees. So I we could do all sort of silly experiments, run campaigns for as low as 50 rupees and still get 10 users to install
Nice.
your app. So yeah, so I think those early days in Paytm were like really formative days for me personally. I think I learned most of my understanding of app ecosystem
Mm-hmm.
at Paytm. So Paytm was like a university for me where I could learn things. Like I said, there's less competition, so a lot of self learning, and thanks to Vijay who gave me that opportunity. And in the process, obviously, we built a good product, right? We really
Yep.
helped Paytm become the default app for mobile recharges way back in 2012-13. And then joined Paytm again 3 years back, just before demonetization, and it was a different ride altogether. Paytm had become a
Yep.
huge company versus what it was in 2012-13, and just demonetization happened when I joined. I joined a week before demon, and then there's no looking back. The day I joined,
Yeah.
for first 5 days it was all fun, but then Modi announced at 8 p.m. and then after that our life changed completely. Yeah, so that's pretty much what I have done in last 24 years, and
Awesome.
it's pretty interesting.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to jump a little more into the growth numbers, but before we get that, two things that I'd like to highlight here. I think one you mentioned is you've had a long stint with gaming, so I think that was with Zapak, right? And the second that you mentioned is a lot of things that you've done at Paytm. So if you were to pick these two to go a little more deeper, say we start with Paytm. And you mentioned that you joined Paytm during Demon. So maybe Zoom's moment today, the ride that Zoom is having today, you might have had when you joined Paytm the second time. So what was it like? So for those times, what are the numbers like? What are the good things? I mean, definitely a lot of
I
challenges
think
as well.
for
But
first few days we didn't know what's happening around us, right? I mean, the numbers were going haywire and people were downloading Paytm. There are a lot of first time users who were downloading, and we were not prepared for that kind of scale, right?
mm-hmm,
Paytm tech was technically prepared. We could handle 30x, 40x. Everyone prepares for that, but no one expects overnight 30x growth in your numbers, right?
mm-hmm,
And a lot of things which we wanted to build, we had to really speed it up. Plans which were 6 months down the line, we had to make it in weeks. The regular process of product management was out of the window, right? It was
yeah,
rapid building, quick iteration, just launch it, less testing, less QA, because there are a lot of users who were coming in new. They had different kind of requirements. Shopkeeper had different kind of requirements. Our feet on street had different kind of requirements because they were onboarding like hundreds of thousands of shopkeepers every day. All that meant that you keep aside your standard product management practices, and actually rapidly build stuff which you think is right. Obviously, we made a lot of mistakes. We built a lot of good products back then, and thankfully, that was the moment when Paytm actually cemented its place in the offline payment space, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
product really clicked with the merchants as well as people who started trying out Paytm for the first time. So yes, it
Right.
was like a zoom moment for Paytm. Like I said, 30x increase in numbers, which eventually after few months it settled.
Yeah.
But the baseline was 6 to 7x more than what it was few months ago.
Nice, 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 nice. Yeah, I think that's probably the good parts. And jumping to the other side of things, like what are some things that you think during, I think today's time, like you mentioned, I think especially around growth, CPM numbers were very, very small back then. So, that was one challenge. And today, I think with the current times, I think a lot of companies are having similar issues where maybe the budgets are small, but CPM numbers have shot up, like at least 20x is what I think the numbers are right now. So, especially with the new stint today, how are you looking at this challenge now?
No, I think, frankly, CPM and CPC, it doesn't really matter, right?
Okay.
Because end of the day, you're optimizing for conversion, right? And your conversion
Right.
could be, if you're a revenue generating business, your conversion is to make more revenue from the money that you're spending, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if CPM is 500 rupees, you try and make 750 rupees, 800 rupees, right? The idea is to be unit economics positive even on the marketing spends. So you obviously when CPM goes up, that
Yeah.
means the monetization opportunities are also higher, not just for the ad companies, but also for you. So the overall economy has grown. So when CPMs are low, that means the demand was less. That means the number of users were low. So it all
Got it.
grows collectively. So I wouldn't see CPM and CPC as any sort of an indicator. The only indicator is that if it is higher, that means there's a higher demand. If it is higher demand, that means you need to build a product which is picked up by everyone.
Which satisfies. Yeah, fair point. I think, yeah, that makes sense. Are there any suggestions or any case studies that you can suggest around like lower marketing budgets today? So how do you grow early? Say say you are currently in this early stage space where you're building out something early. So how do you look at that when maybe your marketing spends are a little lower, but you still need to grow during the current times? So any sort of
So
advice
when
or
you
any
say current
framework?
times, when you say
Yeah.
current times, you're saying COVID times, because this is like uncharted territory, right? No one has seen anything like
Okay.
that, right?
Right. So maybe post COVID, if we can take, okay, say
Yeah.
how should a company
I
navigate the
I
next
I
6 months?
I see, businesses which are running right now. I see an opportunity for reducing the marketing spends for sure. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
demand for marketing has gone down. That means if your business still running, you can crack some great deals. You can get, like you said, better CPCs, better CPM,
Yep.
focus more on conversion. One thing that and I've been seeing that happening because everyone is collectively in it, right? So everyone is
Yeah.
facing some or the other challenges. Uh, Something which I have helped couple of startups, couple of friends who've been doing startups to do inventory sharing or a co traffic sharing model,
Mm-hmm.
right? Everyone wants to help each other right now. No one is competing with each other at this stage, right? So can you find apps which are not directly competing with you? Let's say if you're a content app, can you tab with a news app? If you're a a cricket app, can you tab in another kind of gaming app and do some sort of
Interesting.
inventory sharing, right? Because everyone is like I said, right now in the survival mode, right? So that is one way, and not just right now. In fact, I think inventory sharing is something that somehow has not really worked in India because there's no network that brings two parties together. But if you are creative enough, if you have enough context in the system, you can try it out with a couple of your friends who are founders or who are running other apps.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something which seems to have worked for some of the people I personally spoke to. But otherwise, also I think organic marketing will never lose focus, right? It doesn't really matter what period it is. I mean, post COVID, pre COVID, everyone wants to grow organically, right? And
Organically.
two
Yep.
things that everyone should look at is obviously, I'm talking about mostly because my experience has mostly been around consumer apps. Uh, you focus a lot on word of mouth, and word of mouth comes from a great product. built-in virality? How do you really bring in that little bit of social element, even if it is a pure transactional product? How do you really bring the referral, the natural built referral and not incentive-based built referral around your product? How do you really, focus more on ASO and SEO? And experiment around, different kind of app titles, app screenshot. The ASO is something which we don't generally get time to focus on,
Optimize. Yeah.
uh, and that's something which does not bring dramatic results. So so in that sense, is not going to overnight give you any growth. I mean, it's not something where you tweak something and next day you see jump in number. It adds slowly, and
Yeah.
that's what I think the typical growth chart should look like. You should build increment. You should have that small little incremental growth every week, every fortnight, every month, right? And that is where you start seeing dramatic difference in a couple of months. So that's why
Right.
everyone, anyone who talks to me about ASO, they are looking for some quick hacks or
Yes.
SEO. There's no quick hacks. It's just that you do these small little things, and in next 2 to 3 months you'll start seeing some differences.
Fair point. Fair point. So those are longer term things, but um, yeah, I mean, I think these are things that will build up over time. You're saying to invest some time in building these things, and you'll see the results a couple of months later,
Yeah,
right?
right
So
now, for
those,
example, one thing which I've learned, and again, disassociating from CPM, CPCs,
yeah,
India has, there are a lot of micro entrepreneurs in India, right? Like Misho has shown, how can they leverage the large base of, people who are at home who can, monetize their time, monetize their own network. So
right,
affiliate model really has taken off in India. I mean, that they've shown that model. When I say affiliate, I'm talking about these unorganized affiliate, right?
right.
So every product has that kind of can you build for these people who can monetize from your product? They can
Mm-hmm.
resell your product. So try and build small features, try and build modules where they can pick up your product, earn some commission on top of it. So that is best way of increasing your conversion, because now you're talking about not just spending money on ad impressions and not spending money on Facebook and Google. You're talking about giving a cut of your revenue, GMV, GTV, whatever you call it, to
Yeah,
these micro entrepreneurs. The good part is that it gives you free marketing. They all talk about your product. They share that product with their community. So what Misho has done for its own resellers, you can actually build your own Misho, or you can tie up with
yeah,
companies like Misho and actually look at options on how you can leverage these micro affiliates. And that seems to have
absolutely.
worked for some of the people I was talking to, and they've benefited from these 4, 500, 600, 700 people who are reselling their products. Even
Mm-hmm.
though there's no like I said, conversion might be very poor.
Yeah,
Uh, it may not even work. But the chances are that if your product is good, it gets a lot of free publicity, right? I mean, you
right.
get marketing. So technically, if there's no conversion, your product is out there with at least thousands of people, and hopefully some of them will pick up. And if not at that stage, maybe at a later stage they might convert.
Fair point. Fair point. So I think what you're speaking around is building a good referral system. How do you think around incentives here? Like especially when you're asking people to refer you, I think it's very important to build out a good incentive system, right?
I
That
think
works for you as well as.
so my opinion on incentive is that only referrer should have incentive, not referee. Someone who's
Okay.
installing your app or using your service,
Mm-hmm.
converting, they should convert purely based on the need that they have, because that is when you bring down the referral frauds. If it is only
Got it.
one-sided incentivized, which is the person who's pushing its network to try it out,
Mm-hmm.
you get better quality users. I'm not saying don't do double-sided incentives.
Mm-hmm.
It leads to more misuse and frauds.
Okay.
If you can crack one-sided benefit, which is only on the referrer side,
Mm-hmm.
or even if you're doing two-sided incentive, have it loaded towards the referrer and give less
75,
incentive
25.
to referrer.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, that's a nice point actually. Never thought of that. I think moving on, I'd like to dig deeper, but given the time, moving on to like one section that I think is going to be the meat of this conversation. I think I'd come across an interview where I think in 2016, it was with your story, where you said that the smartphone revolution is yet to happen in India. And I think that was because I think you were referring to the number of users that we have, internet users as well as smartphone users. I think today we are at almost 450 mil. So do you think we've arrived, or what are your thoughts on this next 2 3
Yes.
years?
So, yes, India has about 450 million smartphones, and that's a huge number. The
Mm-hmm.
good part is the good news is that there are still 120 million, 130 million feature phones in India, right? At some point in time, they will convert to smartphones, right?
Hmm.
Uh, so we can expect at least 50 to 60 million new smartphones coming in this year,
Mm-hmm.
out of which almost half of them would be first-time smartphone users,
Mm-hmm.
and that gives you one opportunity to attract a lot more users for existing startups who are already in already live. So they can expect at least 10 to 15% growth in smartphone users, right?
Right.
And now that we've all started using internet a lot more, we started spending more time. The engagement would also be a factor which most starters should start measuring, because it's not just about MAU DAUs. It's about someone is engaging with your app a lot more or not. So focus on the good part is that you're getting a lot of new users, and while new users will be less engaging because they're still learning internet for the first time. When they're first time smartphone users, technically they're first time internet users as well, because on feature phone the kind of internet you have is not really useful mostly. So you have to balance between your high engaging users and also this new set of users who need a lot of hand holding.
Right.
And India unfortunately has this. I'm calling it unfortunately because no one has still found a way to successfully crack this language divide that we have. There are
Mm-hmm.
15, 16 main languages. Uh, and I'm not talking about big companies. They can afford to have translation done in 10 languages, 12 languages. They have
Yep.
resources. They have they have money to do it. Like for example, I'm building my own thing right now. I'm confused. Should I build
Right.
multilingual version to start with? If yes, how many languages should I support? Each
Right.
language that I need to support means I need to put in that extra effort, right? So India has that very complex, unlike most of the countries worldwide where there's just one language. Uh, so that is something which we'll see a lot more happening with all these first time smartphone users coming in. We've seen that in last 2 years. So 2016,
Mm-hmm.
when we had 200 million smartphone users, uh, almost 70 80 million people could understand English, right? And that means 40% of people could understand English.
Mm-hmm.
That number has not changed. So
Yep.
now that means only 20% of people understand English. So
Right.
2 years down the line, this 20% will come down to 12, 13%. So you have to increasingly build apps which are for non-English users. And that's a challenge. It's complex. It's not easy because I think translation quality in some of the apps that I've seen is not up to the mark.
Mm-hmm.
Human translation is costly.
Yep.
So yeah, that's while we have the opportunity of new users coming in, we also have this unique challenge of handling non-English speaking population of India.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Since you mentioned that point, I think one distinct thing we've seen is the rise of Chinese apps. Maybe yes, now the Indian apps have caught back. Right now, I think the share, if you see, the Indian apps have come back. But even that said, I think around 38 to 40% is the number I think you had shared recently. So what is it that they do that they're able to grow so fast in the market? Is it just inorganic, or how are they able to gauge customers or consumers rather so much more
Okay, so
easily or
first we have
better?
to understand what kind of apps Chinese build in
Yeah.
India. So when Chinese are looking at India as a market, obviously
Yeah.
they do not have this luxury of setting any ongoing operations, right? So they don't think any product or app which has an offline leg, right? Like for
Mhm.
example, they will never build a mobility service, or they'll never build
Yeah.
anything which has a feet on street kind of a model or an offline payment model. They
Yeah.
will never get into something like that. Uh, their strengths are they have a hacker mindset in a good way, right?
Right. Right.
They understand Android in and out, right?
Mhm.
They understand social in and out, right? So and
Yeah.
they build products at scale.
Yep.
uh, so they are tech wizards and they believe in rapid building, right? So I have seen
Mhm.
Chinese turning out products or turning out features at such rapid pace. It's unbelievable. It looks as if they are machines. They're not humans. So they have these skill sets. So they
Mhm.
know that when they enter a country like India, where they can't set foot on ground. I mean, most of their tech teams are sitting in China. Uh, they build pure digital products, right?
Right. Yeah.
And first 6 months, they do hundreds of experiments. I mean, Chinese have not just in India, even in China, they because they're also like us. When they launch the product, no one knows that what will work. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we only talk about TikToks of the world, but there are at least 50 other Chinese apps which have tried in India,
Exactly.
not worked, right? So we
Right.
only look at the success cases. So rapid prototyping, your understanding of the Android ecosystem, because they can build products which are very I would say utility driven
Exactly.
and social has a social angle. So that
Yeah.
and that's something which that strength which is, I wouldn't say not there in India, but as Indian startups we focus more on Indian problems. We're trying to solve an Indian problem, whereas Chinese, they don't have any obligation to solve an Indian problem. Their
Mm-hmm.
obligation is to drive more users, drive more engagement.
Right.
So
Right.
they think differently, right? So I'm not.
Got
So
it.
they're not. If you see Chinese, they're not in healthcare space. They're not in
Yeah.
tech space, because they're not trying to understand the common man's problem in India. They're saying, you know, globally people like entertainment. Globally people
True.
like utilities. Globally people like to fiddle around with their phones. How can I
Yeah.
make life better around their phones, right? So
Yeah.
that's one reason why they work here in India.
Got it. So if I can bucket it, say utility you mentioned, I think we have Cam Scanner, we have UC Browser, we have Share It. So that becomes one bucket. Then you mentioned entertainment. I think under entertainment we have games. Gaming can be one like PUBG, and another can be social TikTok. So these are two main buckets. Yes, EdTech is coming in. They have a very strong EdTech market that is coming in. So do you think, I'm trying to understand here, like you mentioned, one is experimentation, that is something that they do really well. So what is the challenge for Indian companies to do something as well or even better? Like what are the things that entrepreneurs here who've joined us or PMs who are here, what are things that they should learn from there that we can work in? It's definitely we understand our market, we should at least understand our market a lot better, right?
No, I think obviously we understand our market much better. That's why we're able to build products which relate more to Indian users when it comes
Hmm.
to their day-to-day requirement. Like for example, payments is like a product which
True.
Chinese companies cannot come and build in India, right? I mean, they can't set up the offline network, they can't set up the merchant network.
Right.
Uh, Interestingly, if you see, your bookkeeping apps, right? Even though it's
Yeah.
a pure digital product,
Hmm.
the Indian companies, which built these kind of products, because
Right.
they were able to relate better to the Indian
True.
context of the shopkeepers, right? So there are certain products which obviously we will continue to build,
Nice.
because we are able to relate better to the population here,
Hmm.
and that's something which I think we should continue to focus on, because
Got it.
like I said, it's our obligation to solve some of the fundamental challenges that India has.
Hmm.
Can I, because India is largely an unorganized market in
Yeah.
any category that you pick up, right?
Yeah.
Even in fintech, you see a lot of people taking loans from unknown. I mean, there are people who are giving cash loans from your neighborhood shops or your pawn shops. Now that market, you pick up any market, there'll be huge unorganized market. Now startups come in,
Hmm.
they look at these unorganized market, they try and organize these markets, right? I mean, this
Right.
is what most Chinese companies will not do, right? Because
Hmm.
that requires different level of commitment, different level of understanding of the user base. So
Right.
yes, I think opportunities exist for both Indian and I won't call it Chinese, they're international developers, right? So all international apps which can build remotely for global markets.
Hmm.
They don't necessarily need to customize anything for India.
Hmm.
Besides just obviously the content part, like TikTok became TikTok because they were able to get first 20-30,000 Indian users to start building content, right? I mean that they had to pay out of pocket to first 100,000 users to start building. They
Hmm.
you what like for example YouTube could not become though even though they call themselves as user generated content, it's
Yeah.
still meant for people who are serious about creating content, right?
Right.
uh, Now TikTok knew that if they have to get people to start creating content, they can't be only focusing on 100,000 people on YouTube who create content, right? uh,
Hmm.
so they have to go mass. But to go mass, I mean, suddenly, you can't just encourage people to create content. So incentivized model worked for them. They started giving, micro cash, micro money to these people who started creating content, right? And then they linked it to performance. More number of likes you get,
Mm-hmm.
more money you'll get. Obviously, it was small money, but now imagine someone who's just sitting at home, has nothing to do, suddenly creates a funny video and earns about 150 rupees at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
Or 5,000 rupees a month. Now that meant, the word of mouth that, you can earn 5,000 rupees on TikTok every month.
Right.
And that too by doing something which, you just like, right? So just start getting, and that's for first 8-9 months, very silently, they kept doing this. And when they had enough content, they
Yeah.
started be marketing it well. And that's when people discovered that, oh, wow, it has some interesting content, some funny content. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why, it then started then using its AI and ML, where they could, because they needed a lot of content to, apply that AI to start with, right? So once they
Got it.
got that content, they started marketing, and then, everyone felt that they had some content for themselves, right? I mean, someone who liked dog videos, someone who liked, dancing videos, people who liked funny videos, some like jokes. So once they built that repository, that's when they started pushing it out.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Last question on this section that I have here. I think since we spoke about the next 100 minutes talking about a lot of consumer apps here. What are your thoughts on a lot of points around Bharat versus India, and people building for the next 100 million, and low ARPU. So these are some keywords that we hear. So what are your thoughts on how to go about
So
building
India
in this?
overall, India overall is a low ARPU market. I mean, there's no, I mean, I don't see any difference between Bharat or India. I mean, this is all, I mean, we as a market
Okay.
generate
Huh,
less revenues.
huh,
Our conversion is poor. Our engagement rates are poorer because, like I said, and I'm talking about specifically about direct revenues that we make from apps. For example, India last year made, and I'm talking about in-app revenues,
huh.
less than $300 million on Play
Interesting.
Store, right?
Mm-hmm.
Considering Indians downloaded 20 billion apps, right?
Oh, wow.
So I think we have a fundamental issue that Indians don't spend inside the app,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and that's something which is going to remain a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So while there are top 1-2 million users, or maybe three
Yeah.
5 million users who might generate some more ARPU, but when you're building a large scale startup, I think you focus on a much larger number. So I think this concept of Bharat India does not exist, because,
Mm-hmm.
at least in my mind, because first of all, I think if you look at Indian cities, people talk
Mm-hmm.
about building products for cities, building product for tier two, tier three, payment companies, or your mobility companies, or they're trying to go into smaller towns.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, well, frankly, we've not yet solved the problem of people living in big cities, right? Even
Mm-hmm.
in Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, you have all kinds of people living, migrant population, blue collared, first salaried, young population, people below the poverty line. So you have
Yeah.
literally India living in each big cities, right? So even if you focus on big cities to start with,
Yeah.
and I'll give you some stats which might be little controversial. Most startups claim, when they are
Huh.
growing, that, oh, they're getting traffic from tier two, tier three, tier four.
Mm.
They all know inside that they will never make money from there. The money still
Mm-hmm.
comes from your tier one cities, right? There are people who, and it still comes from your 15-20% people,
Got it.
and 80% of India's internet traffic
Uh-huh.
on big apps, and I'm talking about some really big apps, is
Yeah.
still coming from top 15 cities. They may claim that their traffic is coming from tier three, tier four. I can tell you it's
Huh.
not.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Go to their
Interesting.
stats closely, you will, while yes, they get tier three, tier four traffic, but
Huh.
75% is coming from top 15 cities. Top 15 cities are still generating the maximum traffic for most startups in India.
Got it. Got it.
They're generating maximum revenues for most startups in India. I'm
Mm-hmm.
yet to see a startup which has 90% traffic coming in from smaller towns. I mean, there
Mm-hmm.
might be few startups I'm not aware of, but anything that I'm aware of, we all know.
Mm-hmm.
They may claim that they are going deep into India, because
Mm-hmm.
frankly, there's no ROI. Now, if I go
Right.
to a small town which is a population of 200,000,
Mm-hmm.
I still need to spend money. My operation structure needs to be built. I need to give full support, and the business will not commensurate with the kind of effort that I put in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everyone understands that, and when they're optimizing their businesses, they will eventually, start focusing more on cities which have larger population. So, and that's what happened.
Interesting.
Um,
Got it.
so that's one thing,
Interesting, sir. Yeah.
the top 15 cities in India are fortunately, unfortunately, generating most of the traffic. So even
Mm-hmm.
if I'm building today something, I
Mm-hmm.
would, I would focus on top 10
Focus.
cities,
Yeah. Yeah.
because the ROI will be better.
Yeah.
I'll see faster growth,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just predictable TG,
Right.
right?
Right.
So my recommendation would be to, when you're building something,
Yep.
unless your product is specifically, built around
For that market.
issues that those smaller towns have, but
Yeah.
if not, then focus on top 10 cities.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Yeah. Thanks for that stat. So if guys, if you find any things that refute this claim, feel free to just post it out and tag Deepak. It'll be interesting to see if you guys, work in certain
I would love
sectors.
to
That'll
know
be.
startups which are
Yeah.
Gen Z, and
Yeah.
if they can give me some proof that they're getting
Yeah.
50% of the traffic outside of big cities, outside of top
Nice.
15 cities.
Nice, nice, nice. Yeah, let's even I'll be interested to know that. So yeah, Deepak, probably just switching gears. I think we're seeing a couple of questions in the questions tab as well. This is specifically around product management right now. So two questions, if I can club the ones that we already have. What are your suggestions and tips? First one is, what are your suggestions and tips to someone who just started a career in product? And here also, a career in product in a smaller startup versus a career in product in, a bigger organization. And the second part would be, to someone who's transitioning now. There are a lot of people who would have worked with a smaller stage company, but their expectations might be similar when they move to another, but they're not able to, transition well enough. So, any thoughts or any pieces of advice that you can give them from maybe your experience or anything that you've seen on how they should tackle, what are things they should take care of?
So, I have, uh, you know, after working with Paytm, now that, I'm building my own stuff, and, when I'm trying to hire product managers,
Mm-hmm.
uh, when I'm interviewing product managers who are working in bigger companies, I think one thing which comes out very clearly is that it's not going to be easy for someone who worked in a bigger company to transition to a smaller company.
Mm-hmm.
So one example which I can give that, um, when you are working for a company which is at a Series B stage, who've been in
Mm-hmm.
business for 3 years. When I say Series B, I mean technically talking about they are at a growth stage. They understand what works for them. Uh, uh, Versus a Series A seed where we are still trying to find product market fit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So product managers who are less experimentative in nature,
Mm-hmm.
who want clarity on what needs to be built, or who wants to take reference from what has been built and how can they improve upon it. Now that's an important skill set. I'm not saying that's not. I mean, they are like prized assets for big companies. But for smaller
Mm-hmm.
companies, no one knows. Even founders do not know what's gonna work, right? I mean, they are they are with their honest effort, they are trying out stuff. They are learning every day.
Mm-hmm.
So product managers who can come up with very open mind, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and an ability to work with a very small tech team, and sometimes even distributed tech teams, sometimes even outsourced tech teams, teams which are not even on their roles, right? Versus bigger companies where you have engineers sitting next to you, or engineers who are on your role, so they also have that skin in the game, same as
Mm-hmm.
yours. Versus, let's say, a seed startup which is trying to find some tech talent here and there, and people are on contract basis. Product manager has to find, they have to build that relationship, that while the engineers may not have that skin in the game, but how do we get the work done from those guys, right? So those kind of skill sets are not easy to get. So when you're hiring for smaller startups, or especially for seed startups, look for product managers who are just hungry. Who everyone says that they are hungry, but you can figure out. People who do not come with any fixed mindset. People who like to experiment a lot. People who really love who understand consumer psyche a lot. I mean, as I in my interviews, I spend a lot of time trying to understand how much they understand, how much what can they speak consumer language. How
Right.
much they understand Indian TG. Even if, let's say, they've lived in a city or they've grown up in a city. I just try and
Mhm.
understand, what is their what is his or her understanding of people living in that city. What do they do? What do they do differently from, let's say, the city they are currently living in? If they've grown up
Right.
in big cities, I try to understand, what have they picked up around them? What are the challenges that they see? So it's always good to discuss things which are not not tech or product related, but related to their understanding of people around them. Because
Mhm.
essentially they have to build products for these people, right? So,
Right.
and as long as you have an open mind and you know that, okay, I understand the consumer, I don't know what will they like eventually when I build,
Mhm.
but I will iterate. I will, rapidly build features which may or may not work.
Mhm.
So those are the people who have better chances of working in a smaller startup. People who are
Right.
more organized, people who can get teams to work with them, who are born leaders, people who are process driven. They
Mhm.
will be great assets at bigger companies, right?
Right.
So you need to, and everyone has different skill sets, and these are all, things which, depending on who the recruiter is, they look into people they trying to bring on board. So
Got it.
right now, I'm hiring people who are, who would just believe in the vision. I don't have any
Right.
product which is built. I don't even know, how it will grow. I don't even know
Right.
the scope of the product, right? And
Yep.
there's no past references. There's no examples to show. Uh,
Right.
so I would, in fact, more than me, more than they trusting me, I need to trust them that they'll be able to, build
Deliver.
what we are trying to, build together. So
Mm,
yeah,
right.
that's the core difference I see in, hiring for bigger companies versus, smaller companies.
Got it. Got it. And since you mentioned, okay, these are the things that you see. So if someone wants to transition right now, I think we have two questions around this. Actually, three questions, four questions. All of them are asking, how does one transition, or what are some things, say you spoke about, consumer side. So someone hasn't been doing that till now. What are some things they should be doing to develop those skills, basic skills? Is
Talk
it
to
a
Okay, so
okay?
very easy. Talk to people around you. Look at every app, download app, fiddle
Hmm.
with product,
Hmm.
read about consumer psyche.
Hmm.
You should naturally be interested. So one skill set that I look for
Hmm.
is their interest in numbers. Analytics is a very integral part of product management journey, right? If you're good at
Got it.
numbers, if you're good at maths,
Yep.
you will do relatively better. I'm not saying people who are not great at maths are not good product managers. You'll do relatively better because you understand data firsthand,
Hmm.
right? And also, I think your ability to your attention to detailing. Your How do you really look when you look at a product? Uh,
Right.
how do you look at non-obvious things, right?
Hmm.
Do you get frustrated by things and just leave it there, or you think of an alternative, or how, if you were there, how can you build a better flow or a better product or a better feature to ensure that no one else gets frustrated. So there are a lot of people who will at Paytm who used to write. I'm talking about product managers. I'm talking about people
Hmm.
I was talking to, that these are 10 things which are wrong.
Hmm.
Very few people will give suggestions also that there are 5 ways where you can improve this. So good
Right.
product manager should look at solutioning
Yep.
problems everyone can identify.
Yep.
It's important to also, your solution may not be perfect because you're sitting outside, not necessarily understand the product well, but as long as you're thinking about solving a problem and not just identifying a problem.
Hmm.
Right? So if you're getting
Fair
into
point.
product management, look at things around you. If you can find solutions to your common day-to-day issues,
Hmm.
you will eventually become a good PM. So attention to detailing is something which, looking at non-obvious things and finding out solutions to such problems is a core skill set.
Got it.
And which is, someone should be good with numbers is
Got it.
another skill set which I personally prefer.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. We have about 10 minutes to go. So even though I have a bunch of questions left, I'll just jump right into the audience Q&A and pick up a couple of interesting questions that we have here. So um, one that has the most votes, I think we have about a 922 here. So Siddharth asked, can you elaborate more on the one-sided incentive system that you mentioned about earlier? Any examples that you've seen? Someone else also asked about referral. Any examples that you have seen that are great referral or incentive-based structures to get more word of mouth marketing going?
So I think the most popular referral programs, generally okay. So so when you're building a referral program, you have to first see what kind of incentive are you giving. Is
Mm-hmm.
it if it is the incentive which is your own currency,
Yep.
then it can be both sided, right? For example, Dropbox was an example where they were giving extra space. Now it was their own
Mm-hmm.
currency, which didn't cost them much, right? Versus, let's say, a shopping app which says that if someone buys for $1,000, they get 100 rupees discount. You also get 100 rupees. Now that's something where there's a cash involved because that goes out of pocket, right?
Mm-hmm.
When there's so one fundamental way to look at it is when it is out of pocket, which is not your currency, that is getting spent, then try and optimize it on the referral side. But if it is something that the currency that you have created, right, that can be applied only inside your products, right? It's a gaming app or a social app which has its own currency. There are some coins which
Mm-hmm.
can only be used within the app, or like I said, like I mentioned, Dropbox. Now there is where or products where the person who has to avail the offer has to make an effort. It's not just something which I just by sitting I tried something and I got an incentive. For example, Airbnb, right? I mean, no one would just so they had a great referral program where your first stay would be highly discounted if you were referred by someone. For that, someone has to actually take a holiday, go somewhere, live there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that the chances of misuse there also were very low. So you have to evaluate that if someone just by sitting at home, like for example, shopping is a great example. If you make it two-sided incentive, there will be misuse.
Right.
People will either create same account, multiple accounts. They will either cancel order. They'll try and game the system. So this is what you need to see, that what's the currency that is being used. Does the referee has to make an effort to do the conversion. Obviously, when I'm talking about referral, it has to be
Mm-hmm.
conversion led. Referral
Yep.
cannot be just on lose metrics like app installs for sure not. Sign up no. Maybe time spent no. Anything that is easily managed by machines,
Mm-hmm.
while you just sign up and you do it at mass scale. Anything that, like I said, which brings in so every company has a metric that is the most important metric for you, right?
Yep.
It could be number of buyers, it could be revenue, it could be time spent. Anything that is directly impacting that one metric, that true north metric that you have,
Mm-hmm.
uh, unless your referral program is impacting that,
Mm-hmm.
you should not be spending money on both sides. So that's, I mean,
Got
these
it.
are core things that you need to keep in mind.
Fair point. Fair point. Yeah. Another couple of questions are around super apps. So we have three questions there. How has China managed to create? So Shruti asks, how has China managed to create super apps with good utility, and why hasn't this happened in India yet? And Prashant asks, what is your take on super apps, especially as compared to having dedicated apps for each? And I think this is coming in from the FB
I
plus
think
Geo.
so China is very different from India. I mean,
Huh.
first we need to understand, India should not compare, to China for simple reason that, like for example, China had this problem of no single app store where you download apps from, right?
Mm-hmm.
China didn't have this issue of 25 languages.
Mm-hmm.
China didn't have this issue of American apps coming in and dominating the market,
Yep.
right? So they had to build. So every company, when they were looking at building their ecosystem, be it let's say we take an example of WeChat, uh, they had to build products, or they had to encourage developers to build products and create their own ecosystem, because there's no single ecosystem where anyone could go and download a browser or download a game or download a utility app, right? So they
Mm-hmm.
helped people to discover this, because it was the market was so distributed when it comes to discovery of apps. Whereas in India, India has just 85% of the downloads come from one single place, which is and Android store, and
Right.
most of the US companies, they had set foot in India several years back and they dominated certain spaces, right? Whereas in China, they didn't let most of these American companies to build products, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Chinese companies, built. So if Google had Facebook and Instagram, they were popular, Twitter were popular in China, chances are that local companies wouldn't have created ecosystems around it, right? So India, unfortunately, is not in that same space.
Right.
We get competition from not just from America, we get from China. So and you know, it's the reason why super apps have not yet worked in India. Uh, no single app except WhatsApp, by the way, has amassed hundreds of millions of users. Now, for super
Right.
app to work, now even in China, when we talk about super app, they're not like every app is a super app, right? There are
Yeah.
only 10, 15 apps which can classify themselves as super app, right? Because they amassed 150, 200, 300 million DAUs, right?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And I'm talking about DAUs because uh, for you to become a super app, each of your utility has to have a couple of million users, right? And it can only come if you have large number of DAUs. Now,
Right.
no Indian app today has amassed more than, I mean, I can't recall any app which has 100 million DAUs in India.
Got it. Got
While
it.
we claim we have 600 million internet users, we have 450 million smartphone users. Except I'm exclude with Facebook and WhatsApp. I'm talking about Indian apps.
Mm-hmm.
There's not even a single Indian app with 100 million DAUs.
Interesting.
Until you build that, and you can assure a couple of millions of users to each utility that you bring onto your app,
Mm-hmm.
it will fail eventually, right? While as a tick mark, you will have mini apps in your app, but if they're not getting used, eventually everyone will lose interest. So the
Got it.
fundamental reason is that we are yet to build a large trafficked app in India. So I
Got it.
still believe super apps can work in India,
Uh-huh.
but for that you need to first the core use case has to be first adopted by millions of users, and then, like for example, okay, and also the definition of super app has to be seen in a different light in India. Like I would call Paytm a super app because
Yeah.
it looks at all your payment needs in a day,
Mm-hmm.
from let's say your gas station to your water bill to your payment to your driver or to someone you need to pay, or any other payment that you need to make. Now any any use case that exists in India where you need to take out cash,
Hmm.
they brought all those use cases in one single
Into
app.
one
So
app.
it became
Yeah.
a payment super app, right? So
Yeah.
verticalized super apps is something which is a good starting point.
Mm-hmm.
Horizontal super apps will take time till the time
Got it.
you build an app which is millions of DAUs. So that's why WhatsApp
Got it.
still has a chance. But obviously, they looked at India market differently. Uh,
Different. Yeah.
uh, so far, I mean, I think with Jio and Facebook partnership coming in
Yeah.
next 2 years, we'll see something.
For sure, for sure. Just on that point, do you see Paytm? Now you said yes, they've probably gone horizontal within the payment space. They do a lot of things, cover a lot of things. But do you see them rolling out into a super app where, say, tomorrow mobility, or someone? I'm just giving you an example, or it can be anything. Grocery delivery. It can be anything. Do you see Paytm evolving into that kind of a super app in the near future?
I think so. Paytm modus operandi was that because they power payments across multiple verticals, right? So
Yeah.
they are one of the largest payments providers to Uber and Zomato,
Hmm.
and they get to see where the users are spending money, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Even in the offline space, what sectors people are spending digitally versus cash.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
so for them, the starting point is they get to see which sector is growing faster, right? And then
Uh-huh.
they can take a call that okay, I want to get
Whether
in.
to get
Like
in.
for example, the perfect example of movies, air
Yeah.
ticket, bus
Yeah.
ticket, rail ticket, because
Hmm.
they saw that
That growth.
it was a mass use case, so they
Yep.
had to go beyond payments.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So the model at Paytm is that first get inside a sector through payment,
Uh-huh.
and if they see mass adoption,
Hmm.
then start building those products in house.
Got it. Any interesting insights around these data points that are contrary to something maybe, that we see on the outside? Anything that you can share, of course, like,
Or what data points?
so anything that you saw, especially around this, like, because you have consumer data points, especially who's spending where, nothing like we don't need to like name a startup, but any sectors that you found were very interesting, where consumer behavior was not what we generally expect.
No, I think one thing which while we all talk about gaming in India,
Uh-huh.
uh, now there are a lot of and when I say gaming, I'm talking about casual gaming. I'm not talking about card games, which are in a
Like
different.
PUBG would be casual gaming.
Yes, PUBG is a casual
Okay.
game.
Right.
Uh, now, while India generates a lot of DAUs for all these international games,
Mm-hmm.
they convert very poorly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what what gaming companies in India would say, they will struggle for next 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
They will not be able to convert millions of users to start paying because, like I said, in gaming, first of all, in casual gaming, you're competing with global players.
Right.
India has traditionally not been so. Indians are not, gamers by birth, right? So if you
Mm-hmm.
are not gamer by birth, you will never be able to create great games, right? So that culture is now developing. So next 3, 4, 5 years, India has to produce games which are of global quality and then hope to get conversions, in-app conversions. Even then, like even today, global quality games, let's say PUBG,
Mm-hmm.
uh, their revenues in India are like very low, right? As compared to
Mm-hmm.
what we're seeing even smaller countries in Europe, like Eastern Europe, they make more revenue than one small country in Eastern Europe, they make more revenue than India. So,
Mm-hmm.
so you have double challenges, right? So, gaming may look exciting category. I
Yeah.
personally, I spent 8 years in gaming and I love gaming as a domain, but I want to do something in gaming, but I
Yeah.
know that uh, there's not much revenue in gaming. I mean, unfortunately, and I'm not discouraging people who are doing gaming. I
Yeah.
think only thing I would recommend that you have to be patient, stay in it for a
Yeah.
couple of years.
Yeah.
You will not see an overnight success coming in. You have to, be at it, build games which are of global quality, and if
Got
possible,
it.
try and build global games. I mean, try and build for global market. I mean, there's no concept of unless you're building around cricket or Bollywood, which I
Yeah.
doubt has much takers now. But
Mm-hmm.
try and build games which someone in US will also
Excuse.
play equally.
Got it. That's interesting. And yeah, I agree with you there. I'm actually currently in that Eastern European country that you mentioned, and it's a massive. The consumer mindset is very different. The people who build it, they have a $10 billion company, like a public listed company, which builds one of the best games. So I think I completely agree with you there. And yeah, that is an interesting point. Um, we're running out of time right now, so I think one or two last questions. A lot of people are asking around Geo plus FB partnership. What's your thoughts on this?
No, I think, like I said, for next,
Yeah.
I don't expect anything to happen overnight. Right? We'll have to give it a time, 1 or 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
One good thing is that, like I said, WhatsApp/Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
they're a pure digital company, right? They don't have that large operations in India. They are not in a business of setting up, offline businesses. And
Yep.
this is where Geo would come in because Geo's core strength is, going on ground, setting up those businesses. So they'll be
Mm-hmm.
able to. And India is not a DIY country, right? I mean, India, be it merchants, be it users, they'll need a lot of handholding. And this is where eventually in 2 years' time, 1 year's time, Geo will come in, try and bring in, the offline ecosystem onto WhatsApp and Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
because Facebook has tried, Facebook has tried everything in last
Mm-hmm.
2 years. They've tried payments, they've tried marketplace, they've tried O2O. It has never
Mm-hmm.
worked because in India, like I said, the person who's running a small business, for them, digital is still non-existent, right? I mean, for
Got
them,
it.
digital is still internet, TikTok, YouTube, and some light work.
Mm-hmm.
It still does not drive their business, right?
Right.
Someone has to go to them, handhold them, tell them continuously, support them, like Paytm did for a lot of merchants, right?
Mm-hmm.
Initially, merchants for first 1 year, 2 years were, they were not really active. You have to really continue to push them, show them the benefits, give them all the support. You should just be call away.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, that is something which Geo will bring in, and maybe one day we'll see some sort of super app coming in India, which could be WhatsApp or Facebook. Chances
Got
are
it.
WhatsApp. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
WhatsApp payments is something which everyone is waiting for.
Yeah.
Will be interesting to see how they compete with the existing UPI players because UPI is the core payment layer behind them. So Google Pay must be the most scared of all the UPI players,
Okay. Okay.
not
That's
Paytm,
interesting.
not PhonePe, because Paytm has its own fundamentally own network, right? It's not easy to dislodge, but
Mm-hmm.
Google Pay built a pure UPI, and it's a great product. I love
Yeah.
Google Pay as a product,
Yeah.
and WhatsApp can easily disrupt them.
Got it.
Easily.
Got it. Got it. Got it. That's an interesting take. Um, yeah, I think we have a bunch of questions. I think what we can do is maybe I'll share these with you if you have some time after the call. Maybe we could mail the participants some answers to this, or maybe you could tweet out some interesting answers to this.
Yeah, that'll be
So,
great. I can do that.
awesome, awesome, perfect. We still have over 140 of them who are still with us. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. Thank you so much, Deepak, for all the insights. And any closing remarks that you'd like to share with them, given that, you know.
No, I think, like I said, yeah, we are all in uncharted territory. So
Hmm.
very challenging times. I wouldn't call it, while there are opportunities, that may exist after this whole mess is over. But
Hmm.
right now, we are all in a very challenging environment. So we just need to stay where we are, be more creative, be more productive,
Hmm.
learn few more skills, think beyond our regular work, and play a little safe right now. Don't be too aggressive with your thought process, because like I said, in India, you know there are, because of large population, 400 500 million internet users. Even if you do like safe things, but
Hmm.
do it in a nice way, build a better product around it, you still have chance of getting few million users. So like I said, there are a lot of opportunity that still exist in India, which where you do not need to really go beyond your comfort zone. Try and build something which you really know well, uh,
Got it.
and you have the right skill sets. Chances are that we'll see through this all together, and hopefully in 6 months, 8 months, things will be normal, and then we'll be back to that hyper growth phase that we were seeing, a few months earlier.
Yep, yep. I think that's all everyone's hoping for here, for sure. Thanks again, once again, for everyone joining us, and thanks again, Deepak.